Hello, I'm M.K.Davis. What you're looking at is a very ancient map of a very ancient time on Earth. And if it's true, it holds some answers to a lot of questions that have been nagging mankind for a very long time. As I've mentioned on some previous episodes about Mu, James Churchward, an Englishman, translated some stone tablets that were in India, and he was taught to do this by a man that he called Rishi, or a Rishi. Maybe it was a title, I don't know. But at any rate, it told about the land of Mu, and it being the origins of mankind, like a Garden of Eden. And it was squarely in the Pacific. And in the Atlantic was another continent named Atlantis. And, of course, we've all heard of Atlantis. And so what I want to talk about today is the relationship between Mu and Egypt. And the reason I want to discuss this is because when you look at the legend of Mu and the legend of Atlantis, you find Mu's fingerprint in the cultures that are spread over the earth. And it's sort of, it's a fascinating thing to see. I want to share it with you. Let's go back to Egypt. As you can see on this map on the far right, Atlantis sits squarely out in the Atlantic Ocean between America and Europe as a continent independent of anything else. So what does Atlantis have to do with Egypt? According to James Churchward, Atlantis was a colony of Mu. According to Churchward, the advent of man upon the earth and across the earth emanated from out of Mu, and it shows here in this map some of the possible migration routes that took people all over the earth, including to Atlantis. Now here's where it gets interesting. According to those Nakal texts, there was a man named Osiris who lived in Atlantis, a colony of Mu. And Osiris decided that he would go back to the motherland, or Mu, and relearn the religion of Mu, the original religion. So he embarked upon a water journey by boat back down to South America and across what at the time, according to Churchward, was an inland sea, the Amazonian Sea, and then across a canal and back into the Pacific. And now you have to remember, at this time, according to those texts, there were no mountains. So the land was fairly level terrain. It was hilly in places, but not mountainous. So it shows a canal there in the area of Lake Titicaca back to the west, to the Pacific. So after a period of time in Mu, Osiris came back to Atlantis and established a college there in Atlantis of the original Lemurian, not only religion, but all the other teachings of Mu. And then, after a period of time, decided to take a mission trip further east. So the man, Osiris, and we're not talking about the myth, Egyptian myth, the god Osiris. We're talking about on the Nakal tablets. And they clearly established that this was a man. And this man eventually found his way over to North Africa and the Nile River Valley, where he established a colony of Mu. At some point, after enough time elapsed by, there was a great cataclysm. And when I say cataclysm, I mean according to the Nicol tablets and Churchward, it was a geomagnetic cataclysm. And in other words, it was something that occurred of immense nature, most likely from space. So it was so destructive that it actually broke the crust of the earth in places, and where it was thinner. And this happened to be beneath, in the ocean basins, beneath where Mu sat, and also beneath where Atlantis sat. Now, according to Churchward, both Mu and Atlantis sat on a gas pocket that was under the crust of the earth, that it actually supported the crust with gas. And that when that geomagnetic event occurred, the crust of the earth itself, where it was thinnest, cracked and vented that gas off. And when it did, those two continents sank beneath not just the waves, but the actual mantle of the earth. They were absorbed into the earth. And this was a cataclysm that left not a lot of people on the earth. The after effects of it were tremendously destructive and of long duration. But not everyone died from it. So there were enough people to restart mankind after that great cataclysm. Now, if you don't think that it's possible for something from space to cause a cataclysm, and I'm not talking about like the meteor crater out in Arizona or something like that. I'm talking about a sure enough cataclysm. Just take a look up and see what it's done to our neighbor. Now, this wasn't done all over the moon. It was done from one direction. So one part of the moon received this battering. But, you know, when Churchward translated those Nicol tablets, they said it was a geomagnetic cataclysm of immense proportions. So if the moon was there then, it would be suffering the same cataclysm, but it doesn't have the erosion to erase them over time. So if you can picture the earth being battered to this extent, yeah, some of these impacts would crack the earth. Some of the magnetic, the gravitational effects of these large bodies could crack the earth. So whatever gas would be under the earth, yeah, it's feasible. Now let's go back to the connections between Mu and Egypt. So Egypt is no longer connected with Atlantis or Mu. They're gone. The colony that's on the Nile is on its own. So the religion that Osiris took to the Nile from Lemuria or Mu is now subject to generational eroding, and it becomes eventually transforms itself into the kind of religion that we see in the hieroglyphs of Egypt today. But they maintain a college in Egypt, and this college continues to teach the original concepts, or the original religion of Mu, which was essentially and simply put the fatherhood of heaven and the brotherhood of man, which is the basis for Christianity and all good things. It's the golden rule. But anyway, back to Egypt. Now this is a boat, and this boat was found in a pit just outside the pyramid, the Great Pyramid, in Egypt, not too far from the Sphinx. It was a dug pit, and it was disassembled, and they reassembled it and put it in a museum. But you can see that this isn't the typical boat that they use on the Nile, the reed boat that the Egyptians were known for. This is something rather special. And this is where I go back to the fingerprints of Mu. Because the general idea was that when the pharaoh died, or the king died, that he would want to return somewhere. Now, Mu is long gone, Atlantis is long gone, but those latent memories of the motherland, which is what Mu means, is motherland, are still there. And when they died, they wanted the soul or the essence of that person to return to the motherland. That's why they built them a boat that was capable of sailing to Mu. And they preserved his body so that it could make that trip on that boat. And that body was called a mummy. It was to return to Mu. So the fingerprints are there. You know, it's interesting to note that we first heard of Atlantis through a Greek philosopher named Plato. And Plato heard about it while he was in Egypt. And there again, you know, according to church word, there was a college of accurate information on Mu and Atlantis that was maintained in what was left of the former colony of Mu in Egypt. And although they may probably have operated clandestinely after the religious element had eroded, that he learned of Atlantis there. And to me, that's significant. Also interesting is this symbol taken from those sacred tablets in India. And they're called there Ra, R-A, the same as in Egypt. And it's a symbol of the Creator in this sense. Now, if they wanted to show just a picture of the sun, for whatever reason, they did not call it Ra. They called it Kin. That would be K-I-N. And this is a symbol taken from those Nikal texts showing Kin. It's an actual drawing of the sun and the mechanics of the sun, which is extraordinary in its own right. You know, how did they know these things? Even the Sumerian creation myths had the fingerprints of Mu. This picture shows the Sumerian first man, which the Bible calls Adam, but the Sumerians in their myth call Adamu. In other words, Adam meaning first man, Mu meaning the motherland. So it's first man from the motherland. So this latent memory of the lost continent of Mu being the origins of all people seems to have some traction in these epic myths and stories, and then again the Bible, especially the first 5 books, which were a compilation. They weren't written by Moses, they were compiled by Moses. And Moses grew up where? In Egypt, where the college was located. You know, there was a pharaoh who stood out among all the pharaohs in Egypt, as he wanted to return to a monotheistic religion instead of the pantheon of gods that were worshipped at that time. He ended up getting in a lot of trouble and was very controversial, and at some point in time they tried to erase his memory. But this pharaoh was named Akhenaten. Akhenaten wanted to get rid of the whole pantheon of gods and just maintain or retain one god, which was Ra, which is the true deity. Ra was a representative of the one true God, the symbol for the one true God, which was the sun and its rays coming down. And he didn't want to worship that symbol. He wanted to worship the one true God, and that symbol represented him. and he wanted to establish that symbol and that one God, that monotheistic religion all over Egypt and the known world, and it was largely successful in doing so, but with much controversy. That in itself seems to imply that he had access to that college where they taught the true religion of Mu, which had the same thing, the sun symbol as a representation of the true deity, the one true God. So Akhenaten, as soon as Akhenaten died, they returned to the pantheon of gods. So it was unsuccessful, but he obviously was influenced to want to worship the one true God, and it ended up costing him dearly. Incidentally, Akhenaten was the father of Tutankhamun, the famous boy king that Howard Carter discovered in the 1920s. There again, you look at Tutankhamun, and you see that Mu embedded in the name. Tut-Ankh. An Ankh is the cross. The cross represents the four creative forces. It's a symbol of Mu. Amun. So those fingerprints are there. Now this is all assuming that the story of Mu, or the legend of Mu, is more than a legend and that it's actually true. If it's not true, then why all the fingerprints? I thank you for your time.